and stuff. All right, 1, 2. Where's my headphones and thing? Let me make sure this. I'm not gonna wear this for the whole episode. I just want to make sure it's recording, which it is doing. All right. So now it's recording. We've got the slate done unofficially. I'm gonna say welcome, y'all. Welcome to APCC. I know you're familiar with the space and whatnot, but welcome, Armani. I was close. Armani and Raf. I am horrible with names, so I gotta ask again. So, welcome Armani. Welcome Raf. Welcome Saw. I go by Oso. I gotta do my taglines. Your boy Oso, in case you ain't know, so rhymes Oso to some, Oso to most. And I will be your host for what we gonna call, for now, the podcast. But the first thing I wanted to ask, I have 2 names in mind for the podcast, so I want to get y'all response and see which one. Should I stick with the original name I had is the Let's Start the Convo podcast, which I kind of fell in love with. I thought that was tough, or Culture on Culture.
That kind of has a ring to it.
What
Could you go over them one more time?
So there's the Let's Start the Convo podcast, or Culture on Culture.
I kind of like Let's Start the Convo.
You kind of like Let's Start the Culture, Let's Start the
Yeah,
Convo.
honestly, that one does make sense to most. But
Man.
culture on culture is like a nice name.
It's in right.
Yeah, like I think it's a dope tagline, but I think let's start the conversation sounds like, like you're on a journey. You know what I mean? It
Okay.
just, and I feel like it encompasses at least as much as I understand of like your objective. You know what I mean?
All right. You know what? I'm like, there's no wrong answer. I came up with both names, so I'll take credit for both of them. And like I said, Let's Start the Convo was my original name, and then I had a program called Culture on Culture, but we had to kind of break that program down. But I just love that name, so I was like, maybe I can transfer it over, but I'll keep it in my back pocket for something else.
Yeah, I can see the logo for it, culture on culture. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I can see it. You know?
Right? It's just yeah, it's nice. It's
It has a
nice.
little bit more slack.
Yeah. A little bit, yeah. But yeah, welcome y'all. I appreciate y'all coming through to sit down and have a conversation with me. I know I was by y'all spot the other day, and we got into some conversations or whatnot, and that's what I do. That's what I love. I love having conversation. I love the battles of minds and exchanging thoughts and whatnot. So I figured, why not invite some folks to do it? I know we did one like, what was it, 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Something like that, and it never surfaced.
It was a good time, though. All in all, it was a great time.
Right? So yeah, I figured it'd be cool, and he said he's got a wonderful young lady who he knows has some opinions and some thoughts and is
Big facts.
well spoken. So
Thank y'all for breezing.
thank y'all for breezing through.
Um,
So in true form, let's start the convo, and let's talk about. Do I want to get back to that same topic?
Get back into it.
All right. So since you weren't involved with the conversation last time, all right, what sparked the whole conversation last time was we were speaking about masculine and feminine,
Energies.
masculine and feminine energies.
Yeah. What gender we're mostly associated with, what kind of characteristics each energy kind of like.
So I think kind of what it was, the position that we kind of took was that the masculine and feminine energy aren't really gender specific. It's just an energy. But throughout time and the way language has kind of worked, it's associated with one or the other. Like men have masculine energy and females have, and I just don't feel like the way. Do you have any thoughts towards that?
Honestly, exactly the same. I don't think it's gendered. I think depending on the person, depending on their experiences, everything, I feel like that really shapes their, what was the word again? Energy?
The energy, yeah. Mm. I gotta spin it. I gotta spin the block back over onto you. How has your perception changed at all? Is it still in the same realm? Is there still like?
I don't think it's like moved too far off the needle. I think like I've talked to a few other young people. So one of them was the guy you ended up talking to, and then like one of the questions I asked him is, as he read the book, Like he gave the book a 9.5. I haven't read the book. I'm on a waiting list for it.
Oh, you're speaking about the ways of the superior
Yeah,
man?
because I think that was the initial reference point. So
Okay.
like I think we can have the conversation, or I can have it a bit more intelligibly the next time around. Hopefully by then I've read the book.
Mhm.
But like I think like one thing he did say to me was that he thought like feminine and masculine energies were synonymous with things attributed to male and female and could be used interchangeably as like prototypes for males, prototypes for females, right? But he did say like there was a fluidity in terms of like who can possess what traits. But the problem I find in setting up these things that like from the two other readers I know, other than I feel like his opinion flip flopped a bit from our conversation and our conversation. But like initially these things are brought like in the same way the two other young men that I've read the book were that like these things were synonymous with male and female. And I think you can then epitomize certain behavior and look down on other behavior because of like whether that behavior is viewed adherently as male or female or masculine or feminine. And so like I think when we're talking about energies, like it isn't like a cold science. So like you're talking about like the ways people behave or like the characteristics people have. And I find like we put them into boxes, you shame behavior in certain people and celebrate behaviors in others. And I don't know if that's the way I see. I know for sure that's not the way I see things, right? Like I think it's largely how we've ended up in problems with like toxic masculinity, where you got guys who feel like they got to be a certain way because they've attributed this energy with being male, and then guys who are like, I think this specifically, I don't, and even like women who might be a bit more aggressive and like want to do these things. These things are viewed as negatives in one space or for one group of people and positives for others and vice versa. And I'm just like, I think you limit the potential of both type of people to do what they need to do if you remove like these broad terms of masculine or feminine energies. And like, so people can live their authentic selves within the sphere of their own interests and abilities.
All right. So what I gathered from everything what you just said there is essentially you view things the same way. Right? It's essentially the same because I think we're saying along the lines of the same thing. It's the energy isn't attributed to just one gender or one thing or whatnot, and it shouldn't be pigeonholed into it. It's just the brain is trained to read it that way. Right? So it was along the same lines when I was saying happy and sad. There's no questions of whether a man or a woman can be happy or sad. When you say masculine or feminine, it's like, no. Hold on. And it just triggers a different type of response. But along the lines, and I think this is what we were trying to say the other day, is exactly that. Like a man can have either or energy and display either or energy, and it can be healthy as long as it's balanced.
And it doesn't necessarily make him like less of a man and more of a woman, you know, like I don't think that correlation should be made either.
That is part of the pigeonholing that you're talking about that you're against, right? Which is essentially why I say like we're saying the same things, but somewhat in different ways. You know what I'm saying?
So like just like I don't know if you wanted to add anything to it, like just to include all voices.
Yeah. Ditto.
Like I think I like a real question then is like if we're talking about it being balanced, like I don't know if you guys have a community of people that you can like reference to, but do you find that you have young men who are like, oh man, I need to like acquire more feminine energy?
So I feel like it's stifled because of public opinion.
Right.
Because there's so much pigeonholing and judgment of that, rather than healthily being like, you know what, man, I need to tap more into some of my feminine. It's like, man, let me just brush that off and get harder. You know what I'm saying? Like,
a lot of society standards push for toxic masculinity, so it's difficult for males to get more in tune and more in touch with their feminine side. And the thing is, it can be really healthy and liberating for a lot of males, you know, but unfortunately, the way society is built and the things that they push on the males is not those things.
I think it also depends on the environment that you're around. Like, for example, I have two younger brothers. One of them is very quote unquote masculine. He like solves his problems by being like, a little aggressive, a little nonchalant. I don't understand why he does that, but I guess that's why. He's silly like that. But my youngest brother, he's like a little different. Unless he's directly influenced by my other brother, he won't be like that. He'll like, be a little more chill. He'll address certain problems a different way. And like a lot more, I don't know, more so how I would do it because I've positioned him or more so like led him that type of way. If that makes sense. Like there's like a very big difference because of the way I was less in my other brother's like way of doing things versus my youngest brother.
And I 100% agree with you. I was mostly raised by my mother, and I would like to say that because of this, I have a lot of more feminine traits than masculine traits, which is what I was kind of getting into you with Sue about the other day. But yeah, like I fully understand where you're coming from. It's definitely people are like a product of their environment. So for sure.
To piggyback off what both of y'all are saying, kids are an excellent testament of how environments influence somebody, right? And as you said with your younger brother, you spent more time around him, so he takes on more of your nature, more of your thoughts, more of your energies. And the one that spent less time takes on what he spent more time around, right? So I know for myself, like even when I think back to myself, my sister was the primary person who raised me. So like I say, my good side comes from her. Everything else, like all my masculinity, I learned from out here. I learned from the block. So not the best examples of masculinity or how to be a man. There was a lot of toxic and over, just over, I didn't want to say over masculine, but over bravado out there. So it is very important your environment is what shapes you. And it takes a lot to get to that point where you're, I want to say, courageous enough to free think for yourself, right? Because I strongly feel it starts from parents because parents went through schooling as well. But once you go into the school system, it trains you to view things in certain ways. And then once you have that teaching, it's very hard to rewire your brain and say, oh, that was all bullshit. I need to actually figure things out for myself because that takes a lot of confidence, a lot of self-trust, right? To actually listen to that inner voice and say, nah, this feels right. Nah, this doesn't feel right. Nah, I want to be more empathetic. Nah, I want to be, and have that balance. So I think, in short, just to revert, I think a lot of it is like when you referred to your brother, not spending one brother spending more time with you, one spent less time with you. And see, it's interesting because you don't, masculine and female energy is in both parties, but also what we were speaking to the last time is women tend to have, I guess, more of a percentage makeup of the feminine energy and vice versa, right? And I guess part of that also depends on how you were brought up as well. Because I know from my experience, the tomboyish type girls or whatnot spent a lot more time with their dads or uncles or male counterparts or whatnot. And then vice versa. You know what I mean? So with the other brother, did they spend time around more toxic type energy and that's where they picked it up, or was it just more outside stuff that influenced them, you think?
I think it's like, yeah, probably. I mean, the community you live in, it's pretty silly, but like the friends he's with, they all like perpetuate the same type of energy. He has been like more chill though recently. I think it is because of the friends he's making. And I feel like they're a better batch of friends than the ones he's had before. But yeah, I think it is the outside type of influence.
I think your strongest indicators, of whatever whatever energies we're discussing and talking about. I think there's so few things that we truly decide for ourselves. Like I think your environment like makes up a lot of those things. I think there's points in your life where I think you drift towards different environments. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I think there's times in my life where like I sought after intellectuals and I found myself in those circles. There's times in my life I found myself in the hood. You know, there's times in my life I found myself in political spheres. And like there were interests of mine and I found myself wanting and like just in those spaces, and my decisions were influenced largely by what I was experiencing and the opinions around me to some level, like to one extent or another. You know what I mean? Whether that was even like a book I picked up that influenced my opinion. So like, I think like all of these things are like a combination of where you're at. And like, I think I draw issue with like a Puritan view of like, this is this and this is that. And I'm just like, it is so much more Venn diagram than anything else for me. Like, I think when I look at any human being, I'm just like, you are a combination of a bunch of different things. Mm-hmm. And like, I fail to like I can't even draw it down to two sets. Like, I don't even know, like, the person who came up with this idea that your energy draws from a masculine and a feminine, and those are the 2 points of energy. Like, I'm just like, I don't know if that makes sense to me. Like, I think there's so many things in between, but.
Well, a couple things I wanted to point out in that. And referring to that, this is what we were saying the other day, like when it comes down to language, everything is up for debate, right? Because it literally just comes from somebody saying, oh, I'm gonna call this a double danger.
Right.
And that's what it is. Like, and people just call it, like there's no, right?
It's also like when we're talking about something intangible, and then we automatically assume a duality. When, like, where did the duality come from? Like, are we sure there isn't a third or a fourth or a fifth or a sixth element? Like, how have we limited the energies that exist to 2 sources? Like, where did we come about that?
Honestly, I think it's because people like to look for quick answers rather than hard answers, and looking for more than like what's already there is just so much work that people don't want to put in.
But like, if this is a philosophical question, then we're also like philosophically searching for truth, right? Like, I think that like is kind of like the bohemian like the way to look at it. But like, how did we like already arrive at this conclusion? I don't know if any of you guys have any greater like understanding on that. Like, I didn't read the book, but like these are things that we're taking, and we're taking them for granted. So like, I want to understand how like you guys understand that.
So I think so. In bringing back the book, and I guess we'll just keep it with talking about different energies, right? You got to call it something, right? So let's say we're talking about hot and cold. What's the third option?
Warm.
What is warm? How would you describe warm?
But then you also have degrees, right? So like I can say that like there's cold, there's absolute cold, which nobody's like experienced here because you would have died. Like, but so, like you have like degrees that literally tell you what is in between. That like there actually isn't 2 things with cold. There's actually just one. It's heat, and how absent heat is. You don't have heat and cold. You just have heat and the absence of heat.
In that, you just brought up 2 things. Where's the third?
No, but there's not 2 things. There's just one.
There's heat, and then there's no heat.
The absence. So how absent is heat? Is like what the question is. So like how quickly are molecules moving? So it's like when a molecule is absolutely still, which is like absolute zero, and then you have when molecules are moving, to what extent? To variant degrees infinitely the other way.
I'm still going to say that's 2 things. There's stagnance and there's movement.
Yeah, but like absolute zero isn't. Like,
there's various degrees of it, but it's still just the 2 things. There's not moving and there's moving.
No, because it's always moving. like there's just always movement. Like there isn't a place on earth that isn't like artificially made where you can experience absolute zero. So like you just have movement. It is how quick that movement is. It isn't movement or no movement. There's always movement.
So what is dead?
Huh? You're still moving. Your body's still breaking down. Like nothing's stagnant. Nothing is stagnant. You can't tell me one thing in life that's stagnant.
Life is a constant change, so that is a true thing. Nothing is stagnant in that aspect. But so then if there's just motion.
Describe to me how this correlates between feminine and masculine energies.
I don't think it correlates. Like that was my question to you was how do you know that like as we talk about the energies that like fill people or like that people have their makeup, how did you decide or how do you know that there are only two sources?
I mean,
Is kind of my question.
I think it's through like observation and description. You know, I think they observe something, they learn how to describe it, and they create words for it. Like, for example, one masculine trait could be being aggressive and so on, right? And that's one way to describe one trait of masculine energy, and it's associated with that one thing. Right?
So like if we're talking then about emotion or like how people act on emotion. So I can be aggressive, right? And like the opposite isn't just the only thing that exists. So like I can be aggressive, you can get aggressive too. But you can also get sad, you can get mad, you can retreat, you can get recluse. There's a whole bunch of things, like there isn't an on and off, there isn't aggressive and not aggressive.
I think
So is my point is that there are far more factors.
Yeah, 100% there is,
Right.
but at the same time, like one gender does display more certain.
Right, but
one
like
gender
you're saying,
displays-
I understand, but you're saying that the genders and like the energies are separate. So yes, we don't even have two genders, to be fair. Like you have like
let's leave that conversation for a completely
intersex
different day.
fall, right? So like it's not really like just black and white, even when it comes to like gender. But like if we're talking about like masculine and feminine energy, how did we decide that there's just on and off, or like hot cold? Like how did we divide all energies into two? That is like kind of what my question is.
Wait, do you think so? I'm confused. Are you saying that all energies between male and female, are determined between masculine and feminine?
It's
Yeah, like that. Is that like, am I misunderstanding it? Is there a third
I
element?
don't think that's exactly what we're saying. I think that.
So what other energies are there?
Then masculine and feminine, like, to be honest, I don't know.
So like
I don't know, but I could tell you that there probably is more energies that we haven't described. Like, I mean, you could say like being an intellect is a sort of energy, right? That isn't really associated with masculine and feminine, because I find that you find the energy of an intellect within women, men and women, you know?
I feel like feminine and masculine energy has been defined so differently, especially if you look through like colonization and everything. I feel like in certain regions and environments, these like feminine and masculine is described a lot differently than it is here. But because I feel like because of how things were when white people were in control and how they had their women be like, cookers, whatever, it just set in stone the roles of what women and men were, and that eventually did lead to their version of what masculine and feminine energy is. And I feel like because of that westernization throughout, like, I guess almost the entire world, a lot of places think like the same way as everyone else. I don't know if that makes sense.
Like I think you like I don't know. I felt like you might have had that one too, but like I think you're talking about like the effects of colonialism on how we view genders and sexes and like sex roles, like the roles of the genders. Sorry, it's just like I think like these were not universal to the world. And I think this is an argument I made to you guys last time. Is like the same things you were describing aren't like true of all of history everywhere. Like
so.
Wait, how so?
Just to kind of respond to that quickly, the pushback I have on that is, I'm utilizing the language that we commonly understand, right? But in utilizing that language, I'm understanding that I have to take it with a grain of salt, and that was just what somebody labeled it. Somebody just called it masculine and feminine. But we're just recognizing that there was an energy that's extremely destructive and an energy that's nurturing, right? And in these two energies, they have varying traits. There's the happiness, there's the joy, there's the love, there's the this, there's the that, and then there's the hate, there's the anger, there's the and those, depending on how those energies are utilized, they either build or they either destroy. Right? And I think I am very, very this or that with the way I view. I'm very much so this or that. I figure all of the variances just add gray and confusion. Right? That's kind of the way I view things, right? So with that being said, like, they could all be true and not at the same time. Like you, and this is where I was talking about having that trust in yourself to just follow. Like, so the other thing I was going to tack on what you said is you would seek out certain things and you would find yourself in those groups, right? You wanted to get more intellect or whatnot. You found intellectuals, you stuck around them, you got the information you gathered, right? At certain points in time growing up, I wanted to, what I viewed as a man was what I saw here, so I wanted to do more of what those men did, right? But ultimately, the driving force is your desire, right?
If I can even double down on that, like I think we're like I think even with like books like the books we were talking about, and I like feel bad like commenting on a book I haven't read yet. I show you my phone, like I'm on the waiting list for it. Like, I believe in
I'm pretty sure I got like a rip copy somewhere. I can send you the PDF. You know what I'm saying? I'm the same.
I'll read it. I promise you, I'll get through the content. But like I think we also are sitting at a time in our life where I think these notions of femininity and masculinity are getting thrown out there. And there's people that are like self-proclaimed experts. And you have a lot of young men that are out there trying to figure out what these things are. Right? And like there isn't a set of credentials. Like people are talking with the authority of like people that have like succeeded in life or like had like successful relationships, and then are giving them advice and like a new lens to look at the world, which is everyone's right. But like because it was written in a book doesn't necessarily give it any validity or any true knowledge or wisdom. And like I think like with the desperation of young men out there, I get more and more skeptical as life like demands a more mutual solution based that is like far more removed from like roles and gender and like you've got to figure out life on a much more even plane than maybe any other time in history or Western history. And like I think you're having these people create like, and people are getting told like such confusing messaging. Like it's like you tell women like, oh, you can't get a husband because you're not feminine enough. You're not tapped into your femininity. That's why no guy likes. But then I tell you, hey, go get a job. Go be a monster. Go be a boss bitch. Go out there. Don't take no for an answer. But be feminine. So I tell my young men, be caring. Like, listen to young people and like, be a good human being and don't fight and don't don't be toxic masculine, but don't be no bitch neither.
I think what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you told this confusing ass message, and I think the reality is it's like you are a man or a woman regardless of these shallow defining energies or like whatever like that.
I think you're right, but I think that also goes back
to what turn off.
To what
I was like, I'm not really hearing you, but I didn't want to interrupt your flow. I'm pretty sure we got on your own.
What he said about I lost my train of thought.
Sorry.
sorry, let me, and I was gonna say something myself and I lost it. But
Oh, yes. He said to listen. Most people don't really listen to their inner voice. They're too focused on what other people are telling them to do and what other people want them to do. You know, they really need to start tapping into their own instincts and intuition. Because when you start listening to other people, you're not really being your true self. You're just listening and creating this false notion and this false reality of who you are based off what other people are saying. You know, because you're holding up to other people's standards of what they think is right and not what you truly think is right.
correct. And to kind of piggyback off that, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Because remember, you asked me about other books, and I was like, honestly and truthfully, I do read some books to get the information, but it's literally just it's literally just information. I don't take it as set in stone. I don't take it as being the gospel or nothing. It literally is up to the individual to take that information, process it, and do with it what you will. Right. And as you said, that's what I started off saying, where I think people lack that self-trust to say, yeah, I like that. No, I don't like that, because society's gonna be, oh, you're a bitch, or oh, you're this, or you're that. And it's like, nah, like the sooner I stop caring about anybody else's opinion, shit's gotten so much easier. Now all of a sudden I'm speaking and people think I'm the wise man. It's like, no, I just really don't give a fuck about anybody else's opinion. That's the only difference, right?
And everybody has this capability, but
Of course.
people are just so like detached from it, and they tell themselves, "Oh, I have to listen to these people because I can't even listen to myself," you know. But in reality, they can, and they just haven't figured out how to.
Honestly, it's just really embarrassing. No offense to anyone who does. Societal norms or whatever, but it's like, I don't know, be yourself.
It's sorry, finish your thought.
Like just in relation to like high school, and like how people are very ridiculous, follow what they think is cool and all that, and it's like just be yourself, man. Like you don't even like this person, or you don't even believe in that, but you're still doing it, and it's just like literally be yourself. You'll be a happier person.
I mean, but that's one of those things that it's a lot easier. So let me back up. It's easier said than done, because the one thing I've come to understand is everybody figures things out at their own pace. And once you figured it out, it's so glaringly obvious. You're like, how come nobody gets it? But prior to, you were just as baffled, right? And the hard part is when you go through school does not train you to be an outlier. School trains you to follow the pattern, don't be the standout. Have the same answers, have the same type of feelings, have the same type of goals. It doesn't really push that individuality, right? It kind of groups people along, because it's been documented. School is more to make great employees, not to build solid individuals, right? So it's not a surprise that people in high school are trying to get with this clique and be with the cool kids here and this, because you're like, just even that concept, the cool kids. What is the cool kids? It might be cool to you, but it might be nerdy as hell to him, right? It's all a matter of perspective. Like somebody's cool is always somebody's nerd, right? So it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength. It takes a lot of knowing yourself to actually be courageous enough to be like, nah, I'm not following that. I'm gonna do this. Nah, I don't care about wearing no Nikes. I'm gonna wear Jordache. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm gonna wear this because this is what's comfortable, not what's in. Like, it takes a lot.
Like, I don't know, like maybe like a question for the table. Like, I guess like you have less experience with like time lapse, but like I would think it would be harder. I think I actually see it like with like the kids at the arcade. Like I remember when we used to roll. I'm sure also you're probably not too different, but like I remember I used to roll with like a clique that was like 20, 30 strong. Like, you know what I mean? Like, especially by the time I was like 19, 20. You know, like we were big groups. I don't see that anymore. So like I wonder like if in today's like your generation, like maybe you're able to sub-click so far that you're allowed that individuality. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder if that like has changed what that component might look like in terms of like who our influences are. So like, if I had to roll with a click with 30, there had to be like some base rules of understanding of how we each move, right? So there was like a lot more, like there was kids that weren't down with what like the whole clique was doing, but we're like forced into it. But if I go out a clique of like, if it's just the four of us, it's a lot easier to find a meeting of minds, right? Like, and a lot more intimately. So I wonder if like your generation feels more free and less bound by the crowd than say maybe our generation.
I have my thoughts, but I'll let y'all answer first. If you have an answer.
I'm not gonna lie, I zoned out a little bit. I started thinking about like God has something to do with it. I'm so sorry.
I appreciate the honesty.
You know what I'm saying? Do you have something to add or?
I was going to, and then I forgot.
Wait, you just like
All right.
Sum it up.
Yeah.
Sum it up.
So like I think in my generation we had large groups, and I think like conforming to those groups like was a lot harder. Whereas like in your like generation, like I've only really seen you. I think you have a bunch of different small groups, but I've only seen you with like 3 or 4 guys at a time. Same with you. I think there's a larger group, there's a subgroup. So do you guys feel more socially free, or do you think you're more socially free?
Yeah, I do feel more socially free actually, but that was a part of me becoming more in tune with like being comfortable with listening to that inner voice, right? Once I started listening to that inner voice and I stopped doubting myself and stopped having those like self-limiting thoughts and beliefs and perceptions of my reality, that's when I actually started to like realize like, wow, like I can do so much, you know, like I can talk to anybody, I can have a conversation with anybody if I just be myself.
Okay, so like maybe like when you weren't yourself, what did that look like?
Oh, when I wasn't myself, bro, like I got like I'd overthink everything. Like I had crazy anxiety. Like I wouldn't want to do nothing. I wouldn't want to talk. I was very quiet, like very, very quiet. Like and my mind was racing. Like my heart was pounding. I was like, do I say something now? No, no, not now. Okay, I'll say something later. And it would and like slowly, like as I like started integrating myself more into like certain like groups, is when I would slowly get more comfortable. And I mean really slowly. Like
I want to give my kind of perspective on that because I think it's the same, but it's changed, and I think it's changed because of all the social media and the other outlets that are out there, right? So back in the days, you really only had what was around you, right? So you kind of had to fit in with a clique or whatnot, or you kind of be on your own.
Yeah.
Right now, people have friends in other countries, this, that, and the third, and they exchange over social media. And then the other part of that is it's a weird balance because there is somewhat more freedom, but because of social media and so many people have eyes on you, there's also way more judgment. Right, with this cancel culture stuff, and it's like you say the wrong thing, and
your career,
right? You know what I'm saying? So like it's weird. There is a sense of more freedom, but at the same time, there's this restriction where everybody's scared to say sort of the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, be the wrong place, be the wrong person, and you're just kind of on your P's and Q's. And then with other thing I'll say is with COVID hitting and what that did, the gathering, like there's this anxiety about being clustered together and being with a group of people and being like there's so many different layers that have changed the way interacting with folks and engaging with folks is.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that also played a huge role in my behavior as a young, you know, like just being too scared to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, offend the wrong person, you know, like I was just too scared to make a move on the chessboard. Stagnant.
And to say that I relate to that, I remember maybe like my boy had a shop over on Queen by Sherburne there, Blessed Beauty Supplies, from 2013 to about 2018. That 5-year period was a huge growth point for me. And I remember the first couple of years I'd be there and I'd be chilling in the basement. I ain't say nothing. I just listen to conversations, this, that, or whatnot. And then afterwards we'd be talking, and me and him could reason about whatever. So we'd be reasoning. And at one point in time, he's like, yo, oh, so straight up, man. For somebody who has such dope things to say, you are quiet as fuck all the time. Like, why are you always so quiet? Like, you should be the one talking a lot of times. You're letting a lot of people say useless things and useless shit, and you're sitting there quietly when you should open your mouth and speak more. And I kind of started taking that to heart and started vocalizing more. And now, like I said, I say whatever it is. Like, I say whatever. I try to be considerate of folks and not, offend anybody, but I try to speak my truth as much as possible. And if I'm wrong, then we can have a conversation about it. You can educate me and we can exchange ideas and thoughts and whatnot. But that definitely came from a point in time where I had to get comfortable and confident enough with myself and like, yo, nah, you do have valid shit to say. You do have valid thoughts. Like, you're not, because I started thinking away from the norm and away from the clicky type stuff that I was used to. And I'd be like, I ain't nobody trying to hear this shit. But then I'd speak and somebody would be like, yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I feel that. I'm like, oh, you agree? Okay, cool. Well, I got more thoughts. Go in there. It's like, oh, okay. That's where that confidence kind of came from, right? So, yeah, like doing that inner work, COVID helped do that as well, being locked down by yourself. You kind of were forced to sit with yourself and look in the mirror and be like, okay, what do I like? What do I not like? What makes me happy? Why am I watching this video and getting angry as hell? Why am I watching all of these videos? I should have stopped like 15 videos ago. Like, it forced you to kind of look in the mirror and analyze that.
Yeah, for me, during COVID, I was bored. I was just playing video games all day. I was pretty young then, I was like 15.
Sorry,
16.
I'm 43. I don't know, like.
I'm 36.
Okay, see, I was right. The other day I'm talking with, who was I talking to? Can't remember who I was talking to. And I'm like, yo, I'm pretty sure I'm older than Saul. He's like, nah, man, Saul's your age. Like, I'm pretty sure. All right, so I'm the elder statesman. 19? 17? Okay, go ahead. All right, 17 and you're holding your own conversation and thing. Don't be shy. Make sure you vocalize. I know you're not shy, but I'm just saying.
Another thing I want to touch on really quickly is it's also hard to grow when you don't allow yourself to be educated, right? When you have those like egotistical, like, like, oh, I can't be wrong. My view is, my perception is always wrong. Like that kind of perception in itself is like toxic for yourself because it doesn't allow you to learn. It doesn't allow you to be open-minded,
Sorry. I was listening. It's just the low battery thing came up on the laptop here, so I don't want it to shut down. But no, you are so right, and that was
one of the struggles that I personally struggled with, and once I stopped and actually started listening to people before I started judging what they were saying and assuming they were wrong, and I started listening, that's when I started becoming a lot smarter. I started becoming more educated, and that's when I started to make a lot more healthy decisions into life, like reading and eating healthy.
To add on to that too, it's frustrating though being on the other side and that type of people thinking that they're being very open and not trying to understand your perspective.
100%.
I think a big part of that goes back to where I was saying with schools and like people are being afraid to be wrong and actually admitting that, oh shit, I'm wrong. I knew the wrong information. I was living wrong all this time. And I think because people are afraid to have that admission, they want to hold on to whatever idea that they have for dear life.
Yeah.
Right?
I personally think it's like really associated with your ego, like, because I really think that like to you, like at least for me in my head, like me being wrong was like such an L. Like it was like, bro, like I'm wrong. That means that like people aren't gonna take me serious anymore. It's just that, like, oh my god, I'm wrong. Like this is the worst possible situation I could be in.
So
but
let's unpack that.
But here's the thing too, right? Is that like I did a little bit of research about what the ego is, and it's really just the survival instinct in the prefrontal cortex of your brain. And And that explained a lot for me, like once I realized what it really was, I'm like, wow, that explains a lot and why I'm so limited in certain areas in my life.
Power of now.
Yeah.
No, no. I was gonna say like that is essentially it. The ego gets in front and starts believing like I am this and I am wants to protect itself. And it's like, nah, like you ain't you're killing yourself. You're doing yourself. But I was saying a lot of that is I feel comes from school. Like, a lot of that comes from school, like those school settings. Like think about being in class and they ask the question. Nobody wants to raise their hand because nobody wants to be wrong in front of the whole class and get embarrassed and get laughed at or get that F on the report card, or rather than an environment that just encourages learning. Ask questions. Like I tell people all the time, even when I'm at my other work. And I remember when I first started working the first couple of years, they're like, yo, you should supervise people. I'm like, me? This guy's been here like 5 years. Have him supervise. Like, no. You do much better because you relate to people a lot more. Because I'd be like, yo, there's no such thing as a stupid question. If you don't know something, ask me. I will tell you. If you don't know how to do it, I will show you. I don't see any point in trying to withhold information or anything like that. You got to go or it's cold.
Oh, I'm just getting a little chilly.
Yeah. Welcome to the APCC cooler. You know what I mean? But
You're trying to sit on my hands. I'm like, I don't just put on my coat.
right? But like the reason I said it to unpack that is because I feel a lot of that comes from school.
I think a lot of it does come from school, but I also think a lot of it comes from like bro, like think about all the stuff that you perceive, man. Like your perception is everything. When you watch people because think about it, like in school, right? Like most of the kids, they won't raise their hand to answer that question, because they're scared. When you see other people do that, it kind of like makes you a little bit more scared and a little bit more uncomfortable. And when you apply that kind of math to different aspects of life, not just in school, but in other parts of life, that's when you start to realize how impactful.
Is it seeing people not want to put up their hands or seeing how they were treated when they put up their hand and gave a wrong answer?
How I think it's wait, you said that one more time.
Was it seeing people not want to raise their hand, or was it seeing the folks that did raise their hand and give the wrong answer and the treatment they got?
It could be both, honestly. It could be one person gave the wrong answer and they're scared to make that same mistake, and it could be that most people are just too scared to put that foot, like even in that kind of space, It's a combination of both.
I feel like it also does depend on the teacher that you have. Like some teachers are very like willing to, teach, like, yeah, that's not right, but it's this. And like make it like a welcoming type of space so that whether or not you have a wrong answer, you're chill. But some teachers, they do force that kind of, or not force, but have that unknowingly toxic kind of space where it's like, yo, I'll put my hand up and it's like, maybe let me not do that again for the next few days.
Right?
Yeah, I think like back to like I think like 100%. I think it could be both. Like I think like if you watch a kid get it wrong, if he gets slammed on or like other people laugh, it can be intimidating. But if you've got that kid who always knows the answer, and now like you guys both have your heads up and you're looking over, and then your buddy hits you, and it's like, hey, should let him answer. Come on. You know what I mean? So like I think it can be like intimidating on both ends. Watching somebody else succeed consistently in a space, I think you can get in your head and remove yourself from that space because you don't want to compete. Or like you feel like, that's their space. They're good at that. Armani answers the question. So I'll just let him do it.
You know what? That's a really good point too, is a lot of people see it as competition and not education. Right? Like when we're going through those kinds of things, it's seen as like, oh, like I have to get this right because of this. Or I have to get this right because, I got to get the dub. But in reality, like it's when you're in school, it's not a competition. You're there to educate yourself. You're there to learn. But it's hard to come out of that like perception, And then,
Question. Do you feel the grading system has anything to do with that?
Anything to do with
the bringing out that competitive nature?
I do think so. I do think it does bring out that competitive nature, to be honest. But I think in earlier grades, like between like 8 and like after kindergarten, I think that it's not so competitive. I think it gets more competitive like during high school, like. And the reason I say this is because like, at least from what I know, like you didn't need a passing grade to get into high school, like when you're in middle school.
Correct, but that doesn't mean it ain't competitive. Little Jimmy wants that gold star. And he's mad if you don't get that gold star, and Tommy got it. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's there's always some level of competition, and just increases and the stakes get higher as you get older, right?
Even with like how the education system is set up, it's not even for your education. It's to get the highest mark, to get into like whatever college program you need. You need those high marks. It's not about what you learn, it's about what you put like out.
In reality, for most careers, you don't really need high marks.
Yeah.
Like I think like exactly like I think like he's on to something. Like he was my mic on. Yeah. He's on to something. It's like I think when you're so like at every stage of school, if you think about elementary school, right? So like I've got a son now, he's about to go to JK, right? So they need to wean him off his naps. So he goes to JK, now he gets no nap. So he's starting to get used to, okay, I've got to go to this place for about 6 hours a day, which isn't far off. It's like the same
The training begins. The training begins.
So it's the same work structure, right? Like, aside from like maybe your job or mine, like you work for 2 hours, you get a 15-minute break. You work another 2 hours, then you get a half-hour break. Then you work another 2 hours, then you get a 15-minute break. Then you work another 2 hours, you go home. So like as a kid, you start off with like about a 6-hour day, right? So you go to school for about you start at 9, your recess is about an hour and a half in, right? You get first recess, right? Then you come back, you work for another hour and a half. Then you get lunch break, right? You get an hour. They say, yo, take it easy, relax. Then you go back to school for another hour and a half. Then you go in for your last recess. So you get another 15-minute break. And then you go home for the day, right? So this continues for you. And like what this trains you, like some of the fundamental trainings I talked to you about, like how like young people and like for yourself, like how young people, like it's important to show your employer you can be somewhere on time, right? So what school
It's half the job.
They mark you late, they mark you absent. So you start to create a track record of what kind of worker you'll be. Does this kid come to school on time, right? So you finish high school. At high school, you should be able to work most intermediate jobs because at the very least, you, in getting your diploma, have shown I can be somewhere on time. I can show up enough times and complete enough tasks to finish 12 years in education, right? Then you go to university, right? Now you have to show an efficiency to be able to complete tasks. They don't care if you, like, I have a degree in political science. I barely remember most of it. You know what I mean? And I think most of what I learned in that time was outside of classrooms. But when I got my job knows with my degree, I should be able to write an essay. I should be able to output that information relatively quickly. I can show up somewhere for 4 years and be pumping out papers and intellectual property like that. That's all my employer knows. My employer doesn't care what my grades are. He doesn't know my grades. He just put on my resume, like Ryerson University. That's it. He doesn't know what my grades are. He's never going to ask me. So like, can you do a job? And then from there, you build a resume, which is a work track record, which then is like, how well did Armani comply? So when I look at your resume and you're 35, and I see that you've had 15 jobs, I'm like, why is this Armani have 15 jobs? He hasn't been able to hold a job longer than a year. What's wrong with Armani? Now I tell you some of your references. So now I call old people that used to work with you. And I'm like, how was Armani as a worker? You know, did he show up on time? How was Ralph? Did she have an attitude problem? Like, you know what I mean? Whatever. Like, how did she get along with her teammates? Right? And so I now have to figure, do I want to hire this guy who's going to leave me, even if he's a great worker? Maybe this guy's on a climb. He's just going to come and use me. I'm going to train him, and then he's going to fuck off. Right? So like everything about your education system is to streamline you into work. And then from there, your whole life, you're getting graded on how good a worker or how valuable you can be in making someone else's money.
The only other thing I'm going to add on to that is
I ain't got nothing else to say.
the only other thing that I'm going to add on to that is high school, college, and university are very much about socializing and building a network. Because finish, don't finish, do well, don't do well. If you got strong relationships, you'll find support in different places. You'll find work. So like we've all heard the stories of people having to train the boss's cousin to be their boss, and they've never worked a day yet. But because it's the boss's cousin, they pull him in, right? But in theory, I don't necessarily have a problem with that. And I say that because if I got an opportunity and I know Saul, and Saul's my boy, and I know he's competent enough that if I give him what he can do, I'm going to pull him in. Because I know Saul, rather than having to go through the research of resumes, interviews, reference calls, yada, 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 and then bring you in, and then I got to get to know you, know your personality, this. And it's like, you know what? He's smart, but he's an asshole. You know what I mean? He comes in and the energy in the room is just off, and people don't like him, and the work environment is just, you know what? I should have just brought in Saul. Everybody gets along with Saul. I mean, he makes an error on a paper or two, but I can correct that, and you know what I mean? So,
The devil you know versus the devil you don't.
right?
Right?
School is an interesting tool if you utilize it properly, I feel.
I think like for all this,
Like, what is one thing that you do from school? Like, what are some good?
I think there's like actually like
it's amazing.
oh sorry, my bad.
Some like good positive habits, some good positive capabilities and skills that you gain like universities. Like, what are some of those things?
I think my habits were horrible, but and like so like I'm gonna go like about a few things. I personally really enjoyed and I told you this. I enjoyed the competitive nature of school. I liked being underestimated. Like I'm dressed like this pretty much my whole life. I go to school like this. I remember like looking, and I paid for school myself. I worked every summer, collected money, went and paid my own money. And I remember sitting in class with people that I like at least got the feeling that they thought they were better than me, and I didn't belong. And that for me fueled me. And I learned like in my university degree, like that nobody's better than me. Like it sounds super arrogant, but like I learned that like when I put my pen to that table and I put in the work, I win. Like, you know what I mean? And like there was something incredibly powerful for me in that period. You know, like when I looked at kids who had it made, who like still had mom and dad packing their lunch. And I'm like, I'm coming from work. I remember I had teachers who never saw me because I used to work. I used to work at Rabbi. I used to work night shifts. Sometimes I didn't make it to class. There was one class I didn't. The first time the teacher spoke to me was when I handed in my final exam. And I killed it, right? So like, it's just like, I think those things, like I learned a confidence in me. I learned no holds barred. I can compete with the best of the minds out there. That was one thing I took. I built incredible relationships. I met my wife from like university friendships I made. You know what I mean? So like I built strong bonds with people that like have done amazing things. I got brothers that are doctors, lawyers, all of that. And like, I think that it was just like, yeah, socially, I think, and it was a time where my mind opened up to whole new ideas. Like I had profs that blew my mind, changed the way I thought about the world. You know what I mean? And like, you're going in and like, it's an intimidating space, but you learn that you're on even foot with anyone. You know, like I learned when I wrote my paper, I could disagree with my prof, as long as I could back my shit up. You know what I mean? And I like that feeling of like, you be me, you know?
And I think I thrived in that environment, and I had profs that like rooted for me and like, made that all possible. So like, I overall like think it was a great experience. I regret not doing it, but it happened the way it happened, and I'm happy for it.
What's one skill you learned? Like one like
Crying like a motherfucker. Yeah, like just I think being able to put my ideas down on paper in a way that I think is like effective, and I think I was a horrible writer. I did poorly in English all through my high school career, and I learned it was just I wasn't interested in what I was writing about. So I learned how to do that effectively.
I think that is the most impactful part of school is interest.
Yeah.
And quite often it's a cookie cutter package rather than, I guess, the Montessori type style where it's like, oh, you excel in this, you should go in this field, and then push you in that field and help you excel in that. Whereas school is just kind of like, oh, do your English, your math, this, oh, you want to be this? Yeah, that's cool. You should be this. Like, even that what I think is a toxic question. What do you want to be when you grow up?
I don't
Dream of labor. I saw somebody write that. I was like,
I also think like at the age that they expect you to figure it all out, like it's kind of insane. Like for example, the way the credit system works is you kind of have to choose whether you want to go to university or college. And who knows, maybe one day like you'll change your mind as you get older, and then you gotta go back and do all these uni credits, and like it's hard to really like implement to really like find yourself in society, because like they expect all these high expectations at such a young age. They expect you to have it all figured out at such a young age.
I think so. It's interesting. A couple of things popped into my mind. It gets hard to keep them all in track. But one, I remember seeing this post of this lady, and she's like, I got my degree, da 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 da. My husband finished high school and got his high school diploma, and he got into trades, and he quadruples what I make in a year easily. Just on a weekend, he makes what I make in 2 weeks. So with that being said, she's like, get into trades, figure out what you want to do, and just do that. My reason for kind of bringing that up is with school, they have you so focused on trying to compete, to fit in, to follow the mold that you don't really have time to think about, what do I like?
Mm-hmm.
What is my interest? What is, right? And that's part of, the reality of it is part of the plan because they need people to work, right? If everybody was an individual and they were on their bosses or whatnot, whatever corporation would have nobody working there, because why would you want to work for that asshole when you can do your own thing?
Yeah.
Right? So they can't instill that type of confidence in you, or this whole corporation known as Canada would crumble.
Yeah.
Right? So they got to keep that going. So that's part of it. But I think the sooner folks realize it's you versus you, and that you don't necessarily have to fit into the society or find your way to fit in the society, you find yourself and society will find you. Right? I think that's the way that it should actually work, which is kind of what you said you did. You found yourself, you listen to your inner voice, and now I guarantee you, as you navigate things that you desire and you put your mind to, you'll find you in the same fashion. In the same fashion when you're like, I want intellectual folks. Suddenly you met intellectual folks. That literally is the power of the self, the power of the I. It's when you actually put your mind and your thoughts to the one thing, then it'll grow. If you put your mind to growth, it'll grow. If you stay stuck in the ego, you'll stay stuck.
The only reason why I had these kinds of thoughts was because I was away from school. I wasn't in school. I took time away from school. Now I'm thinking about going back to school, but just thinking about it. But when I took this time off, it really helped me find topics of interest, psychology, philosophy, nutrition. These are all really great topics of interest for me, and I would have never found that if I didn't take the time off of school. Probably still would have been a brain rot kid and known almost nothing about myself.
I think school in the absence of I think I often point this with my partner there, but like I've always seen school as a tool. And like I was also given time, like against my father's wishes. You have African parents, and you know the vibes. You know, every year from when I finished high school, my dad was on my back. You know, just like, what are you doing here? Like, what are you doing with your life? So I got time to like find interest, and I found politics, which was my first like real love in life. Like you couldn't get me to stop breathing. You couldn't get me to like turn my head. Like if I was watching, I woke up, I was watching the news. I was like, I could at the time I could tell you what was going on in Beirut, like live time. I woke up, Al Jazeera was my homepage. So I knew I wanted to get into politics, and I think with school, it's like I think it's a means to an end. And like some people like find it for philosophical reasons. I don't believe in that like nonsense.
Wait, what?
Like I think people like go to school for like philosophical reasons. Like I'm not paying you for something I could do for free by myself. Like I want to learn about philosophy. I would go pick up a philosophy book and go read it. Like unless I want to like publish papers, which I do. But that aside, is like if you realize you're coming out of school, like my advice will be my advice for my son, is figure out, do you want money? Do you want fulfillment? And how does school help you find those things? Like so, and is school necessary for you to find those things? Right? So like I went into politics, I was like, okay, maybe I'll pursue a career in politics, so I need this. I might need to show a degree that backs my shit. Or just like even for my own self-knowledge, but two birds, one stone, this is where I want to go. I think like I've had people around me that are like, I want to go to art school. And I'm just like, why? Like, why?
just
Yeah. Like, you're gonna spend $10,000 a year. I'm like, you got YouTube. Like nobody cares about your degree. If you're good at it, you're good at it. The work will speak for itself.
I will piggyback off of that.
I think also that same kind of like thought process can be applied to philosophy too, you know, like I think that when you search and you find like all these different kind of philosophical ideas and then you start to build your own, you can write articles and you can, you know what I'm saying, start a podcast or whatever.
Right. But you don't need school.
No, you don't. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I don't think
Keep my money in my pocket and put the knowledge in my head.
No, I can say though that school would be beneficial for you to be getting used to like, I don't know, let's say deadlines or, you know, holding a certain kind of standard for your, I don't know, philosophical essays.
So
I feel like school would be a good place to build those kind of like strong skills. You know, I feel like a lot of the skills I learned was in school, and I've just applied those skills to, you know, my everyday life, and I got better at every day.
So, and this kind of goes back to the question you asked him in regards to school. I think what school kind of does is it gives somebody the authority to say where you have to be and what you have to do. Whereas if you're doing on your own, you have to be that authority. You have to hold yourself accountable. And self-accountability is a big problem for a lot of folks. I'll say everybody, but I'm just gonna say a lot of folks, right? And I think I think that's kind of what folks lean into school for. Because I went to International Academy of Design and Technology to learn recording arts technology, right? I hated it. It was called a rap program, right? I hated it. But I went to school, and I remember after doing the course and spending all that money and building up all that debt, I was like, man, if I literally locked myself in the studio for 8 hours a day, I would have accomplished the same shit. Like, honestly, it's the same thing like I was saying when you reference books and whatnot. Yeah, I can lead you to books or whatnot, but at the end of the day, you're still going to have to decipher the information to decide whether you believe it or you don't. Is this factual? Is this not? It's like, and when it comes to school, this is where I agree with you, is it's a tool. If you know exactly what you want to do when you feel like paying this amount of money will help you get there faster, then by all means do so, right?
It could be a necessity, right? Like you've got like doctors. I can't, like, no matter how badly I want to be a doctor, like if I don't get the degree, I can't be a doctor. I know how to do the surgery, but
Gotta go to med school.
right.
Well, that's more so somebody can be liable for you,
Yeah.
right? Because to be a doctor, you gotta practice at a specific hospital, and that hospital takes on your insurance. So if you fuck up,
No, I think
They're
they
gonna-
take on
insurance actually.
because like
Doctors like are not actually hired by the hospital. They're contracts. It's weird. So they're like they basically have to start their own business, and then the hospital contracts them under their service is the business,
Mhm.
and they're a contract worker. But like the liability is picked up by their I forgot what it's called.
if something happens and there's
What was it?
Oh,
if your boy fucks up, I guarantee you the hospital will be listed in that lawsuit,
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
right? Like you're a representative. So for example, I work for a company called CRGI. We do the event production for the Rogers Center,
Yeah.
right? Disney on Ice years ago, there's a labor company called NASCO. So NASCO does the labor. We oversee the labor company and are intermediate between the building and all of that stuff and yada, yada, yada. One of the railings was left loose. It slipped through, lady fell. Didn't really hurt herself, but she sued. NASCO, CRGI, Rogers Center, Feld Entertainment, who is Disney. All four labeled in the lawsuit. And then from there, you have to depict, well, whose liability, da 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 da. Of course, the hospital is going to protect themselves and be like, hey, he's a contractor, talk to him, right? But in order for them to hire you, they're going to have to say, what is your training, right? And I just feel that's the reason behind it. Again, I'm very
You
black
won't get
and
insurance, like there's just like laws, like you can't just like come and scrub it.
It's-
Your ass will go to jail.
it's like, because this is the thing, you could like think about like all of these modern medicines were taught from people who weren't, you know what I'm saying? Like they learned this from people in bushes and villages and railroad, like from indigenous people that did practice in all of these places, right? But for this structure to work and for like the insurance companies need business, right? The lawyers, everybody needs business. So all of these different things have to be put in play in order for them to continue business. The FDA has to get, so you know what I'm saying? Like all of these things have to be in play in order for them to get money. And I think it falls along the same line, because then you could have spent 10,000 hours studying stuff. You could be the best surgeon and whatnot. Because you don't have that paper, they don't want to invest in you, but you do know your shit, right? So that's just their way of being like, okay, you vetted him, you watched him, you did it. Yeah, okay, cool. You marked his papers. All right, cool. And then they're gonna hold you liable for you know what I'm saying? Because then the school is liable for giving you that diploma and whatnot, like, right?
that's a whole mess.
It's literally everybody kind of covering their own ass and making sure they can still make money in the process.
Huh?
Like, shit.
Yeah. That's it.
Listen, all of these TV shows that we watch have some reality built into it, right? But it's one of those things where the world does this weird shit where like they show you some stuff, like it's make believe, but it's kind of really real, and just wait to see what your reaction is. And then based on your reaction, they might tell you it's facts, or they might say, they might tell you it's facts, or we might even just wrap this soon because it's getting kind of it's getting later. But like, this is one of those situations. They tell you some shit, they show you some like the alien stuff. No, there's no such thing. Now every 2 days there's a post talking about, yeah, aliens are actually real and extraterrestrials. This is
That's crazy.
it's not really, because realistically, I think we're aliens. We were just labeled as humans, so we think it's normal, but we're aliens.
Do you think that we're like alien to this planet? Like, do you think that we were brought like on a vessel and brought here?
I mean,
Who knows?
then that's the whole thing. Like for me, realistically, the way I see it, we're just part of this one big germ called Earth,
Yeah.
right? Like when they showed that COVID things with the spikes and the what. That's what I think the Earth is, right? The trees are just extensions of it. Those are just the nerve endings that read, and you know what I'm saying? Like, and we're just attached to that. Like, we're just attached to it, bouncing around. But we have some consciousness, so we think we're the shit,
Yeah.
right? We think we're individual, but like, if you look at water, a drop of water don't know the difference from the lake or the ocean. Or water is just water. It just does its thing as part of the environment. But people, nah, I'm this, you're that, and I'm higher than you, and I'm ranked better. And
I'm gonna be completely honest, bro. If aliens are real, they've already been here. Think about how old the universe is. There's no way they haven't at least like flown over and been like, oh look, humans, you know? There's no way. Like, think about how old the universe is, man. This shit is old as hell. Old as we can't even comprehend how old this motherfucker is. This shit is old as hell. Like, bro, like trillions and billions of years old. Man.
yeah,
Like, what?
I don't know. I was saying I truly believe that we are aliens.
Yeah.
We're walking aliens. Like I'll think sometimes, like, if I was a dog and I saw me walking up to it, what would I think? Because I know I look at like I used to look at raccoons and trip out like at the way they move with their hands and stuff, and be like, yo. So imagine a dog looking at this like walking around on two legs and shit, choking like, what is this? Like, what is this?
Slow.
Who broke this guy?
We're so much slower and weaker than everything else on this planet now. Like, it's crazy. Like, think about it, bro.
But I think it's like our intellect and our social, like, and our ability to be social.
Yeah, that's
Like, those are the two things that put us head and shoulders, I think, above like most animals in the most destructive way possible, to be fair. Like,
That's all that evolved is this.
Sorry, go ahead.
So either or
Domesticate them? Yeah.
Yo, I'm not gonna lie, the way that dogs, I watched a video about like dog domestication. Does that work? Domestication?
Sure. Listen, I understand what you're saying.
What's the video about dog domestication, man? Like, bro, like, it was just making this joke about how like this wolf looked like was like 1 million years of like Earth evolution, and then 10,000 years of human like evolution, and it showed like a pug. You know, like it's crazy. Like, and I was told that like pugs, like, because of the way their like DNA is formed or something, like they struggle to breathe. Like they can't breathe properly. Like that's why they sound like, you know, that like noise they make. That's why
like,
they-
I'm like, yeah, like, I'm like, what if we're the NPCs? Like, you ever think about that? Like,
Technically speaking, we are, because NPC stands for non-playable character. So you are your own.
But
like you're assuming that I'm playing.
Yeah, but who's being
Right? But like I mean like okay, maybe more like what I mean is like we're not
the mains of the story. Like,
have you seen like that Planet Earth docu where they've got like where they like put up like these like cameras in the middle of the forest and this guy like recorded these trees over like the span of like 12 years, and like you low-key see these trees fight in slow-mo. Like you'll see like a branch come out, like strangle a tree and like break it, and like, it's nuts. And I'm like,
what if this whole time, like, you got trees that are like 10,000 years old? Like, I'm like, what if it's them? Like, we're just fertilizing to get around for a bit. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what if they're the main characters? Like,
I remember my boy said this theory to me, and I've never let go of it. Can't disprove it, can't prove it, right? But it's like nothing exists outside of your belief.
Right. Yeah.
So like, for example, like y'all are here, but y'all might not even really be real. Y'all are just part of my imagination,
Facts.
right? There's
I
no
can't prove you
outside,
exist
there's no real
outside of
street
my-
cars, there's no nothing. It's just
I had my boy, and it was just not fun doing it. I'm like, what if? How do you prove I exist?
like, well, if you crash right now,
I hear about it on the news.
like,
you might, you might not. Like, who knows, right? There's people that I went to school with, and I don't know if they're alive or not.
apparently math are experts in people do it too.
yeah, that's
So,
too
crazy. That's insane. Like, he knows what that shit over there is doing right now. I can't even see.
And then speaking to how old the Earth is and how old humans are in relation to that or whatnot. Who knows what we forgot?
Yeah. Bro, history could all be bullshit. You know?
I think it all is. Like, have you guys ever read like any anthropology?
No.
Like, it's just like I read this book. It's Gun, Steel, and Germs. And like I just like now convinced that's the only anthropological book that I've ever read. And I'm just convinced like we're all just racist. Like I'm just like it makes no sense. Like
So I wouldn't say they're all racist, but they all, the minds that probably wrote that stuff, and that's, again, we are just getting somebody's description of their experience.
yeah, like I put no faith in his. I'm like, you have nothing to prove that like what you're telling me is right. Like another thing that blows my mind is, you know, there's no pictures of the slave ship. You can Google it. There isn't a picture of a slave ship.
Well,
That's pretty wild.
I
The
mean,
last slave ship arrived less than 100 years ago. There was cameras. White folks got pictures of black guys with like collars on, but you don't got pictures of the ship that brought them here.
I mean,
And you brought over millions. Like it's like these ships would have been dying a dozen,
So,
tripping over them.
so this is the thing is, and I've gotten to a lot of debates about this, the slavery stories. It's very hard to determine what's exaggerated from what's actual fact.
Right? They got pictures of Vikings ships, but no slave ships. I'm like, how? Yeah, and there's like also documentation of like Christopher Columbus documents seeing black people here
Correct.
before that.
Correct.
Like when he
Documentation.
got here, there was already black. When you
Correct.
go back to like Egypt and you look at like mummies were buried with the cocoa, like cocaine leaves. How did they get them there? Cocaine leaves only grow in South America.
So
Where they come from?
that goes back to the whole Pangea theory and there's a lot.
Yeah.
Pangea's, because if you look at the map, it looks like it all fits together like a puzzle. So there's a theory that it was all one landmass, and then it was separated at a point in time.
Doesn't that like, don't people that talk about like dinosaurs and shit say that that's how it was? Like on like, what is that shit called?
You've got tectonic plates that they say are still shifting.
Yeah.
That's why you got regions that are like similar to others, even though they're on like separate.
I don't even know what I'm talking about.
Sorry.
Um,
Talking about nutrition, guys.
no. What I'm gonna actually say is we'll probably wrap this first sit down episode up. It was a dope conversation. Before we close out or whatnot, is any last quotes? I know you wanted to do a plug.
Yes, so it's called In 20 on Spotify. The very next podcast is called I then space 20. Really good podcast. Give it a listen. Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh, I have nothing to say.
Yeah.
I have nothing to say.
That's cool too. Eat healthy. Gotcha.
Eat healthy.
Gotcha.
Eating healthy, man. It taps you into like a lot of potential, you know. Like personally for me, like when I started eating healthy, I tapped into a lot more of my potential than I thought I had. I didn't think I had all this potential.
That is very key because it's you hear all of these sayings all your life and you're like, yeah, whatever, but it actually makes sense. You are what you eat.
You know, my friend like says this, and I always quote him on this. I'm gonna say it. I don't know. He says, "You'll never know how beautiful the light is until you step into it." And I think what he means by this is like, you'll never know how good something is until you experience it.
Correct.
Right? Like when you, because for me, like, bro, I used to dish working out. And I was like, you look stupid. You're like lifting 10,000 bench pressing. Like, you look dumb, bro. Like, what are you doing? And then I actually started like lifting weights, and I was like, this is the shit. Like, what? And I'm getting strong. I look good. Like, damn, you know. And it was the same for healthy food. You know, I used to hate on it. I was like, bro, that shit tastes nasty. It doesn't do anything for me. And then I started eating consistently. I started seeing a lot more results, and I had more energy. I felt smarter. I have ADHD, my symptoms reduced. Like, I had a lot of benefits from eating. And I think a lot of people can benefit. So, eat healthy, guys.
10,000%.
But yeah, I think, live like you'll die tomorrow, learn like you'll live forever. You know what I mean? And I hope these conversations like help enrich that for everybody at this table, myself included.
And a lot from you guys today. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Stay present. Stay present, stay present, stay present. I'll just leave it with that. Appreciate y'all. Sorry, I appreciate love y'all. Thank y'all for coming on.
Love, bro, love.
Everybody travel safe, get where you gotta get to go. Let's start the Convo podcast officially wrap.
Appreciate you all so much.
Like the first 10, 20 minutes, I was like, I didn't know what to say.